Hello everybody, it is me, Pacific. I wanted to do a video today. I'd actually thought of this morning on my way to church, called From Hibbing to Hong Kong. And the reason I wanted to do it is give some of my viewers a perspective contrast. In 2007, I left a pretty bad marriage of 14 years. Lived in a little town called Virginia, Minnesota, about 9,000 people. Moved 30 miles up the road and spent a year living in Hibbing, Minnesota. Yes, that's right. Bob Dylan's hometown. It's where his house was, and when I drove school bus there, I went right down the main street that goes to Hibbing High School, which was renamed Bob Dylan Way, and saw that blue house at the corner of an intersection that everybody knew as Bob Dylan's house. Hibbing, Minnesota was a town of 18,000 population, a mining town, a heavily drinking town, and if you weren't born and raised there, a very hard to socially fit town. I rented an apartment there. It was an old turn-of-the-century house turned into a duplex. I had the original front part of the house. It had a cute glass and screen enclosed front porch, then the living room with the crossbar windows, and it was cute. $400 a month, man, and that included all utilities. I lived across the street from Range Mental Health. It was an old school shut down, turned into a health facility, and I thought, wow, Pacific can actually say he lived across the street from a mental institution. I drove a little bus up there, also called the Heartland Express, which was a job contracted by the company I work for from the city of Hibbing, and people would call in. It was an actual two-way radio phone where it would ring, you'd answer it, say Heartland Express, and somebody would want to be picked up, and you would take them to wherever they wanted to go, the Duluth Clinic, the library, the store, Walmart, whatever. It was a cute little town. I loved it. Howard Street was a main drag, had cute little shops and quaint little cafes and stuff. But when I lived there, it was kind of depressing. When I first moved in up there, getting away from a horrible marriage, getting my thoughts settled, I'd take a walk on the weekends, because if I didn't have sports trips or whatever, I'd have Saturdays and Sundays off. And I'd walk to town, and the first thing I noticed, there was like nobody walking around. I'd walk through the neighborhood and I could walk 20 blocks and maybe see one other person if they were walking. It was really cool walking to work early in the morning, 5:15 in the morning. I'd walk over to the bus garage that I worked at, and there's nobody out there, so you could wake up, no traffic, no problem. It kind of had an almost Currier and Ives feel to it. It had the old iron street lamps. But the community at large, it was pretty cold. I didn't connect well with people. There were a few nice souls to me up there and all that, but by and large, I wasn't connecting, and I finally figured out in my mind, I got to get out of here. What I didn't realize is in February of '08, I got on a dating site try to find me a woman. I had vowed I'd never get married again, but I thought, you know, I'm getting older, I don't want to be all alone, and my intent was to find somebody in that town to go walking with, do stuff with. Nobody. Ended up meeting online a girl from the Philippines who lived and worked in Hong Kong, and all of a sudden, as things unfolded, I never realized I would end up going all the way to Hong Kong, Hibbing to Hong Kong. The reason I make this video, keeping it short but sweet, unbelievable. Town of Hibbing is about 18,000 population. I never realized when I would go to Hong Kong for the first time, they had that many people just driving taxi cabs. Imagine the whole city of Hibbing employed as a taxi cab driver. Unbelievable. Hong Kong has 7 million people. Skyscrapers jammed in together, crowded everywhere. Bike changes at a crosswalk, and you can't see the white lines anymore with the sea of black hair and humanity crossing. Trams and buses, ferries. In Hibbing, we got 2 simple buses running around called the Heartland Express. It was unreal. The reason I mention Hibbing I was born and raised in LA, viewers, and I used to have a love affair with Minnesota. I was in this for a good 10 years. I was obsessed with the cold and the frost and umpteen below zero. And one day in February in Hibbing, it got down to 50 below, and they shut down school. And that's when something in me finally registered and said, why do I like this cold? The people are cold. The climate is cold. There's nothing to do. I don't drink. I am out of here at the end of the school year. Going to Hong Kong and contrasting Hong Kong with that was unbelievable. The difference was night and day. And it was so interesting to me that how you can live in an American town and feel like a complete alien stranger. And I was born in this country. No offense to some of the nice Hibbingites that I met. Hibbing has an interesting history. It's got a big, giant iron ore mine. In fact, many years ago, they moved all the houses, buildings, restaurants, hotels over as they started digging the mine wider and wider. So a lot of those buildings have been relocated to their present place now. Hibbing has its own news, and it has little things to offer here and there. It has a community college, and I thought the town was kind of quaint. But by and large, socially, if you weren't born and raised up there, it was a lonely, lonely place. So in June of that year, when school got out, I took off all the way to eastern Washington, a little town called Colville, and right away, the first thing I noticed is people were a lot warmer and would greet me on the street and say hello, and I was like, wow, it's amazing how even in America we got little cultures within a culture. Going to Hong Kong, though, would change all of that. I suddenly looked at all of America different, and it was amazing. Hong Kong was electric and energetic and just beyond anything I could comprehend. Seeing everything written in Chinese font, seeing the busyness, the profusion of signs and stuff, air conditioning units hanging out of the buildings, laundry hanging out of skyscrapers outside the windows. It was beyond my wildest dreams, watching ships coming and going on the South China Sea. And it was like, this is unreal. It was funny, when I rented in that quaint little apartment, that old house, I had 3 months of complete peace. And Hibbing's kind of a nowhere town. If you work at the mines, you could make good money. But unfortunately, a lot of those towns and a lot of places in America, a lot of people are just kind of going down. I'm a good tenant. I pay my rent on time, keep my place clean, and I'm quiet. 3 months of peace. The landlord was finishing up a complete remodel to the back side. He took the back part of the old house, turned it into a duplex with its own back entrance and everything, and a main wall between us. And my peace was shattered when 2 18-year-old children moved in who had a baby and weren't married, and that baby was about 2 years old. And I did the appropriate thing, introduced myself to them, thought, they're young and lively, and they might be good neighbors. Oh my gosh. By the second night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm hearing banging and F you and screaming and yelling as the two of them are fighting and as their toddler's running. And they'd let that toddler stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember laying there going, what kind of doofuses would let their toddler stay up till 2 in the morning? One lost his job, one quit the job, and then they were both. This is why I'm so against people being on the system. I went over and did the reasonable thing and talked to them. First time, we're sorry. Noise never went away. Then it went from we're sorry to F you, shut up, and slamming the door. And I thought, wow, I could never get anything done about the noise. And it was amazing. Here I am, a nice guy, older than both of them, no respect, no provocation by me, and even the landlord got to the point where he wouldn't deal with the problem. Landlords today don't want to deal with problems. They just want rent money. That's all they care about. I was so glad to leave that town because it was cold. I remember when I drove the buses there that most of the people wouldn't even communicate with me. I did have one route out in the country, out on one of the lakes, and those kids were pretty nice to me, and the parents would say hello. But in Hibbing itself, oh my gosh, I was so glad to get out of there. Hong Kong awakened all my senses I never knew I had. I was always very energetic, passionate, And the first thing that impressed me about Asian cultures is like, how come I didn't discover this a long time ago? This has energy, but it just, what a perspective from Hibbing to Hong Kong. By the way, for you viewers, the gal I met online, that didn't work out. Unfortunately, I did my best and it didn't work out. But the experience of Hong Kong will last with me till my grave. It affected me deeply. Hibbing even affected me. I've lived all over the U.S., but Hibbing had a profound effect on me. It just made me realize that even in America, you can be an alien. You can be a stranger. And living in Hibbing taught me something, and living in Hong Kong taught me what it was like to feel like a foreigner. But so did living in Hibbing. It taught me that right here in this country, I'm a white guy in a white community, and I felt ostracized, unaccepted, and virtually banished. I found a deep stoic coldness. And I admit, viewers, I was born in California where we're just kind of like, hey, what's up, dude? And I couldn't deal with it. I would never go back there to live, even if I made $1 billion. Well, I don't know. If they paid me $1 billion to do it, then I'd go up there, take the money, and turn around and leave. Of course, with $1 billion, you could buy your house and just never be there all. Just go travel. I'm amazed in America how, in some ways, we're not all the same. Not all towns are the same. Parts of Minnesota were almost, to me, foreign. And yet I go to Hong Kong, and for the first time in my life, I knew what it felt like to be a minority. But I knew what it felt like to be a minority amongst my own skin color. And it was weird. Perspective shots. By the way, as an anecdote, Bob Dylan was booed off the stage at Hibbing High School when he first performed. Whether you love him or hate him, he went on to become quite successful with his music, while most of the people I saw in Hibbing live on this. The head of a pin stuck and going nowhere. And it just was weird. I found a lot of the people in that part of the country to be socially retarded. And that was a real eye-opener to me. The mining community, men abusing women, women that were tough as men, and a lot of drinking, and I thought, you know what? This is not the place Pacific belongs. But I liked the prettiness of the town. There were parts of town that were kind of quaint and cute, and I liked living across the street from a mental institution because at nighttime, 5 o'clock, it closed. There was never any problem. Though some local Hibbingite in the middle of the night backed into my beautiful Ford pickup, damaged it, and left the scene. And what was ironic, I was laying there in bed and I had heard a noise, but it didn't even register it was my truck. Came out the next morning and saw pieces on the front, right in the snow. I busted out a headlight and part of the grill, and I was like, wow, somebody couldn't even leave a note or knock on my door. And the street was so wide with no other parked cars on it. I was amazed at how awful it was to live up there. I remember the feeling of feeling like I'm almost scared to live in a town like this. I love it when people say hello, thank you, and are friendly. I didn't like it there. And this is part of America, man. We got some scary places here, folks. Admittedly, there was no murders and stuff, but it's just very uncomfortable being in a town so cold. Hong Kong was interesting. People from all over the world. Some were not so nice. Some were. As I said before, I got along very well with the Filipino population. And I still have many good friends from there to this day that still call me, still keep in touch. But from Hibbing to Hong Kong, viewers, I put this video together to say you never know where life's going to take you. You never know what's around the next bend in the road. Little did I realize from a town of 18,000 to a city of 7 million and Asia's world city would I end up. Now I'm in Denver suburbs, Colorado, and I don't miss Minnesota. I learned a lot of good things up there. Loved Lake Superior. Glad I got to experience things like the Tower Sudan mine and some cool stuff. But man, I don't want to go there anymore. I still want to go back to Asia and see some more places. That place rocks. But this is my thoughts on the matter. Tell me what you think. Tell us about your small town experiences. Tell us you're from where to where. Hibbing to Hong Kong, man. What a trip. This is Pacific signing off. Bye-bye.